about parts catalog. Basically, imagine that each of you ordered a set of locomotives from GE. In the past, this is the way it worked. Each of you would have a custom-built design for your set of locomotives. Thus, the parts that went into your locomotive would be completely different from the ones in his over there. So when we would send you your locomotive, we would include with it books like these. This is one of 3 for a set of locomotive. There are about 100 parts listed on most of these pages with drawings. And what you would use this for is, say a few months down the line, something broke on your locomotive. You would have 2 choices. One, you could bring it into a GE shop and we'd fix it for you. Or if it was just something little, you could look up the part number in that book. It's separated by like tab sections of the locomotive with drawings and everything to help you out. And you could find the part number of that part and just order it instead of having to worry about it. So this is what's known as a parts catalog. Now, there's a couple problems with this. First of all, a waste of resources. I mean, look at all that paper. Plus, we would have to keep copies of them. There's an actual entire floor of a building right now that has these things in it. Additionally, too much time. This guy's working on a locomotive. He has to go and find the correct book somewhere with the correct page in it. Plus, it becomes hard to read because he's been working on a locomotive. He probably has greasy hands. The book's going to get ruined, then it'll need to be replaced. It's a complete waste. The Parts Catalog project was formed to come up with something better. Now, there are 2 basic divisions to this project. There's the front end and the back end. Now, I was assigned to the back end, but just so this all goes together, I'll explain the front end quickly. For the front end, the new system that they made, the front end is like everything that the customer sees, like to help them with the ordering of the parts. So what they did is they put it all online, and the repairman would use the tough book like Wayne talked about, and he would open it up, and there would be on the screen a picture of a general locomotive. And they could click on the area of the locomotive that a broken part came from, and click Find, and it would break it down until it found the part, and then you would just use the order screens and basically just click Go, and your part will be ordered. It was really simple. Now, the back end, which is my project, is everything that keeps the data in the front end accurate. Now, it's not just typing it in. Say, like, an emissions thing went out, OSHA made some new regulation that a part was like bad for the environment, or a part was for safety regulations changed. That part needs to be superseded to a different part in every single one of those sets of catalogs for every single customer in 75 countries around the world. That's a lot of changes to worry about. And you have to schedule things in there, and you got to make new ones for new locomotives that were built. There's a lot of information that these people do. And the people who do them are known as the catalogers. Believe it or not, there's only 3 people, 3 catalogers, and they work at the plant at GE. So we had to make a brand new system for them because the previous system that they were working on was binders full of data, basically, like I was telling you. And they had to manually look up information. Every day they would print out a stack of paper, wasted resources there. And they had a few computer screens to help them, but they were all DOS prompt type screens, which returned like real sloppy information. They'd run commands like T1HH, HDD, DLL, which made no sense to me in the beginning, but I slowly learned. Well, the first thing we did is we met with the front-end team and decided we need to store all this information in a database instead of on paper. So we had our DBA at GE, Alan Cornell, create for us an Oracle database. These are all of the tables for both the front-end and back-end parts catalog. I didn't bother drawing all the lines because I'd never figure it out. But that just gives you a brief idea of how encompassing this project really is. Didn't start out this big, but trust me, every week you think of new things that need to be added. Next, we had meetings. We met with those women I talked about, the catalogers, twice a week. And during these meetings, we would ask them, what do you do in your typical day? Explain to me everything you do. And as the weeks went on and we began to grasp everything they did, we would ask them questions, what would you like to be able to do in the future? Is there anything that you completely hate? Do you have any ideas? And then we began designing prototype screens. I would design mine in Microsoft Access. They wouldn't actually do anything, but they look real nice. And then I'd bring it into the meeting and put on screen and say, I could make you a screen that looked like this. It has a button here. When you click this, these results would happen. You'd insert this here, type that there, etc. Would you want something like this? And sometimes they say yes, sometimes no. But usually they'd say yes, but could it also do this? And so the next meeting, I would bring in a revised prototype screen as per their specifications from the last meeting. And I would say, here's the new one. Is there anything else that you would like it to do? Is there any changes? And we would work in this way until we had what we all thought at the time was the way we wanted the screen to work. Afterwards, just the back-end team and I, there were 4 of us actually, would get together and talk about the technological issues behind it. The catalogers wouldn't come because they barely knew Windows, let alone all the database stuff. So we would all get together in a conference room, and we would be surrounded by dry erase boards, and we would just brainstorm for however long it took. We would draw up data flow diagrams all over. We'd list every possible outcome that the screen would do, and we'd figure out all the steps in the screen that would make the screen work. After we thought we had it all finished, one of us would be assigned control of the screen. If it was me, as was the case about a third or a quarter of the time, I would then return to my desk and create a detailed design spec. And that explains basically how to make the screen work. This is one of the ones I made. I'm not going to go through it. I'm just going to show you the brief headers. It would have an overview. It had the screen name first, and then an overview of what the screen does. And those are all the tables that this screen will manipulate. That's a prototype screen like the one I told you that I made in Access. Then it says every single element in those tables that the screen will use with any other information on the right side that you might need. And you'll notice that screen had 2 drop-down boxes. That's how the information gets into those drop-down boxes down here. And then these are all the steps and all of the issues that go into making the actual screen work. It lists how data traverses through the ERD and what happens, what records are created in the database as a result of the screen, how many are created, restrictions. And after this one doesn't have one, but there's also an additional information section sometimes which says things like all error messages should appear in a pop-up. Could you please add a pop-up if it works that says records added successfully, things like that, and anything else that was needed. Once I got it back, I would begin testing it. I would write some queries in SQL. I would do something with the screen and then use these queries to test whether or not the records in the database were produced correctly and working that way. And the other way I tested my screens was, as my boss put it, my goal was to break it. Do anything on that screen that I think that these women, the catalogers, might do that would cause a null exception error or other type of error that would just completely make it blow up. If I could make it blow up, that was good, because it's better for it to happen to us before it's in production mode than to our client. Afterwards, implementation. Wayne briefly described it. We have what's known as the Friday morning push. Every Friday, every other Friday or so at 5 a.m., all new changes at Knowledge Park go and get pushed into production. We do it so early so that hopefully by 8 o'clock when everyone else comes to work, everything's done and taken care of. So once the new screens have been implemented, I would begin training the users. I would go visit them at their offices. I would first explain to him, here's that screen that we worked on together. This is a general overview to remind you of what it does. Then I would walk them through a few examples. I would answer all their questions, and quite often they would give suggestions on a couple more things they'd like to see in the screen, because after finally seeing it, they come up with a few more ideas. And then after I was done training them, I would go back to work and put their suggestions into action. I'd work with my developers and the other members of the team to get those things working. This is a few of the screens that we made. I wish I could actually show you what they did, but GE information is confidential. But you can tell that at the very least, they're a lot better than the DOS prompt type screens that I spoke to you about. We made 20 screens so far in all. There's 3 of them. In summary, what I did over the past few months was I assisted in the design, debugging, and implementation of the new system. I acted as a liaison between the team and the developers, and I helped train the users on how to use the new system. As for lessons learned, first, try not to act like an intern. If you start any email with, I'm an intern and I was wondering, you're probably not going to get the reply you're looking for, because the interns, at least the way I noticed it, are at the lowest end of the line. Next, ask questions and offer suggestions. Any suggestion will usually spark an even better one. It's the best thing you can do. Next, remember that the system is for your client, not you. I've seen around me a lot of people being determined that something will be great and not asking users if they want it, and they devote